All right, Johnny, what do the final numbers from the Halos this last season tell us about the Halos? We're going to talk about that. And what are the contract numbers for players not named Ohtani and Trout? You'll be surprised at what some of the players are making and just how valuable are the Angels in the organization. We're going to talk all about this. You're Locked On with Mike and Jon, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. You can give us a rate and a review on Apple Podcast and Spotify. It helps other Angel fans to find the #1 podcast of all time. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe and click the bell to be notified every time a new episode drops. And today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Happy Friday to you, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is Jon, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother Jon.
Mike, you and I have been fans of this team for a very long time, and we've seen the good and the bad and everything in between. And while this season was surely a disappointment, there's some surprising numbers that came out of 2022 that you probably wouldn't have expected, considering the results that we got, and our win-loss record was abysmal. But you and I wanted to dive into the numbers and just see where the Angels ended up at the end of the 2022 season. Why don't you hit us with some of those stats?
These numbers will definitely prove where the Angels went wrong this season. And it was not the starting staff, Jon.
What?
This was just the third season. Hear me. The third season in the 2000s. So that's 22 years, Jon.
Correct.
That the starting staff had an ERA below 3.70.
Wow.
So, Angel fans, Locked On Angel listeners, Locked On Angel watchers, when you say, we need pitching, you need to just be reminded that this season we had pitching.
Yes.
We had really
100%.
great starting pitching. It was the fourth time in Angel history that starting pitching has accumulated a 15-plus WAR, but also accumulated under 60 wins as a staff.
Interesting.
And Patrick Sandoval says yes and amen, because that guy pitched a heck of a season and only won, 5 games? I think it was 5 or 6
Something
games,
like
right?
that,
And had 8 or 9 losses. And so here's some of the numbers from the last, 50-plus years. So in 1975, the Angels starting staff had a 15 WAR and only 59 wins as a starting staff. 77 had a 15.3, 58 wins. 84, 15.4 WAR and 58 wins last season. The one we just went through, 15.1 WAR and only 52 wins as a starting staff.
So they had a 0.1 better WAR than 75, but still only had 7 less wins than that season. Good grief.
Yeah.
What in the world?
Yeah. I think the numbers will help us to understand why. So when you say what in the world, let me share this with you, and then I'd love your thoughts.
Okay.
Here is where the Angels ended in WAR rankings for offense, for the starters, for the bullpen, and for defense. All right. So first, I'm going to start with the starters because that was actually the best. They were 7th in Major League Baseball in WAR as a starting rotation, Jon.
Wow.
15.1. Who would have thought that last season we would be having this conversation at the end of this season?
That the offense completely fell off and that the pitching was so much better.
Yeah. So here's where the offense landed. 22nd in Major League Baseball with a 12.3 WAR.
That makes sense.
Now here's where the problem starts to really show. The bullpen.
Yeah.
They were tied for 23rd with a 1.8 WAR.
Really?
And then here's where it really shines a light on where the Angels struggled. Johnny, they were tied for 20th in Major League Baseball defensively with a, get this, negative 8.2 defensive WAR.
Negative?
Yes.
What in the
Yes.
world happened to our defense?
Exactly. So I think if you look at those numbers, John, it's obvious where the problem is and where the problem isn't. The problem is not the starters, which is so exciting.
Right.
Detmers, Suarez,
Finally.
Sandoval, Ohtani, Lorenzen, Jonathan. I mean, like Jonathan Diaz, all of those guys were great, right?
Me?
Even Chase. Yeah, you were there. Chase Silseth, even when he came up, he was consistent, right? Like, so we even Tucker Davidson. I know he struggled, but even Tucker came up and did an okay job. So it was not the starters. The problem, ironically, was offense. And we didn't think we'd struggle offensively. And then bullpen, we thought we solved that problem, and we didn't. And then really, defensively, fell apart without Rendon, Fletch, and Walsh in the lineup regularly.
That's a really good point, because if the defense is a negative 8.2 defensive WAR, that really goes to show that you need Rendon at third, you need Fletch at short or second, and you need Walsh at first. And then I also think about Brandon Marsh and Joe Adell kind of struggling in left field for most of the year. And I have to think about the times where the ball was hit into the corner and it plinkoed off of the corner in left field at Angel Stadium.
Suddenly it became Price is Right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what it looked like when they were out there. But it makes a lot of sense, Mike. And also I think about, we didn't have a month and a half of Trout. I know his defense isn't as good as it used to be, but still having him in center field as a reliable center fielder is huge. And so even with Andrew Velasquez at shortstop, we put up with his bat so that we could have his glove in the infield, still a negative 8.2. And I also have to comment, Luis Rengifo did struggle at second base and at shortstop.
Yep.
And I really think he's a much better second baseman than shortstop. I know he played some short, but if we're going to go that route this season, I think Fletch has to be the shortstop. And I think Rengifo has to be the second baseman. Now, I've said it many times on the show, I would much prefer having somebody get signed to play the middle infield. And then you have Fletch and Soto and Rengifo all kind of working together with whoever this big signing might be. But man, that really surprises me. That catches my attention and catches me off guard. Negative 8.2 defense.
It makes sense why they allowed Squid to stay in the lineup, even if he was struggling, because obviously these numbers are probably in front of them as well. And if Perry and Taman are talking to Phil Nevin before games, because Joe Madden let us know about that, then I'm sure that they probably had these conversations about where they are defensively and why Squid was in there, even if he was really struggling. And it would make sense why Squid would start batting right-handed. Like, hey, let's figure out how we can get some offense from him, because without him in the lineup, I wonder what the defensive WAR would have been.
Would have been
if
even
Squid
worse.
hadn't have been in there. It would have been a whole lot worse. And so that really opened my eyes. And so looking just at this, I think the Halos, there's a couple things they need to do. They obviously need to upgrade their offense. Now, a full season with Trout, full season with Fletch, full season with Rendon, full season with Walsh, I think immediately upgrades the offense. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't make a trade.
It's also not going to happen. Like, those guys are not going to be there the whole season.
Right. And so I think that they either need to bring in a piece that's going to play a significant role in their offensive production, like a Trey Turner. I really like Trey Turner. But here's the thing. Trey Turner actually struggled defensively last season.
He played a lot more short. I think he's a natural second baseman as opposed to a shortstop. Yeah.
So it might be worth getting like a Dansby Swanson instead of a Trey Turner, because I think that the Angels need to look at two factors here, not just a bat, but also a glove. And when they can get both of those things, I think that they correct two of their problems. Now, when it comes to the bullpen, Johnny, I don't know what the heck they need to do, because I thought what they did was actually pretty great at the beginning of the year. And it was,
well, I mean, you have Aaron Loup with his sub-1 ERA with the Mets, and it's like, what better signing is there than that?
Call him
And
Aaron
then
Poop again. Just do it. Just one
Aaron
time.
Poop. Is that what you want me to say?
Yes.
But also, I also have to think about how this bullpen was used most of the beginning of the season before Joe Madden was fired.
Yeah.
We had a great Braves fan comment on one of our videos. It was about Raisel Iglesias and how he did better in Atlanta. And he said, I can't remember one situation where Raisel inherited runners. He had a clean inning every time he came in. So that probably helped make him that much better in Atlanta as well. So I appreciated that comment. I think his name was Math. That's a fun name. Math. And
Math is a wonderful
full
thing.
thing. There you go. And if he's from the UK, it's Maths. But anyway, he mentioned that, and that really got me thinking about the bullpen usage and how often our guys had to come in and clean up somebody else's mess, never had a clean inning to come into. Yeah, it's just really frustrating. So perhaps with Phil Nevin managing the bullpen from day one, it will look a lot different. But you're right, Mike. I mean, how do you correct a problem like this? You really have to assess. We need better defense, and we need that extra glove. And I just made myself laugh from Dumb and Dumber. Extra gloves. You need that extra gloves the whole time. You got to have that extra glove in there who can field and play a strong short. And then even in the outfield as well, we got to find a solid left fielder to really help out our defense there as well.
The best part about doing Locked On Angels with your brother is that there's all of these inside jokes, and then we have to pause and actually let the listeners in on the inside jokes.
At the expense of our listeners and viewers. I'm sorry, everybody.
It's great. Well, Locked On Angels is brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. Listen, Bet Online has been with us since day one, and they are great friends of the pod. And they're your number one source for all of your betting needs this season, especially as you watch the NFL, and the season right now is going strong, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. You can find all the latest player developments and team matchups, news, podcasts. They have in-depth articles, analysis on every game that you can find. John and I are 49er fans, and they have analysis on Jimmy Garoppolo, and a lot of people like him. I don't know if we're sold on him yet, but that's 49ers, not Angels. So let me continue. And as always, Bet Online remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information, with live betting, up to the minute scores for every sport out there. If you're not sure like how to place bets or what to place bets on, Bet Online actually is really, really helpful, and they'll allow you to spend your money wisely. They're the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including the baseball playoffs, MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head to their website today, betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts.
We want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. There's been a lot of conversation around what kind of contract Shohei Ohtani might get, but we really have to focus on some of these arbitration eligible players who are part of our young core, and we should take that into account in terms of how much the Angels will be willing to spend and what they're going to spend, because it actually adds about maybe 20 million to the payroll. And so if they stick around that 180 million that they've held so firmly to, you've got 110 wrapped up in Trout and Rendon and Ohtani. You've got about 20 million for the rest of the team. So really they have about 50 million to play with in free agency if they stick to that 180 million. But Mike, the arbitration numbers were released, and here's where a few of the halos were projected to land. First of all, you had Griffin Canning, and we haven't seen him in a while because he's been dealing with the yeah, I feel that way too. 1.1 million is the expected arbitration salary that he would get. Luis Rengifo, 2.4 million. Jaime Barria coming in at 1.2 million. Chad Wallach, of course, came up and caught the no-hitter for Reed Detmers, came up from AAA, 800K. Jared Walsh would receive potentially 2.7 million, Taylor Ward 2.9 million, and Patrick Sandoval 2.8 million. So those are the arbitration eligible players. Those are the projected numbers in terms of money that they might receive. Is there anything there that surprises you? Maybe somebody who's undervalued or overvalued? What do you think about those numbers and those players?
You know, I know we're talking millions of dollars here, but I actually, as I look over this list,
millions of dollars.
These guys, especially Taylor Ward, who had a really great year, he's really not going to hurt the budget. He's really not going to break the bank. And I like that. because I think that this is going to be another breakout year for him. He's kind of in
Mm-hmm.
that peak year for all baseball players. He'll be 29 and he's heading into that age 29 season, and he's got a
Gotta
couple
stay
of
away from the wall.
right. Yeah. And, age 30, age 31, age 32 seems to be kind of the peak years for players. So Ward's right in the middle of that and only going to cost us around $3 million is great. And then Patrick
Mm-hmm.
Sandoval, I think he's going to have a Logan Webb type of season
Ooh,
this season.
I like that
I think he's
comparison.
going to have a strong year. We're going to be confident in him. Maybe a Logan Gilbert as well, who really bounced back from the Mariners. And so I think he's going to have a good year. So, I mean, only around 3 million there as well. And then Walshy, 3 million. It seems pretty reasonable. I think Renjifo's bump is well deserved. Chad Wallach stands out to me, John, because if we needed a backup catcher, he's the guy that I would want on the team immediately. In fact,
Okay.
I would want him on the team this last season. I think that we probably need to do a conversation about Max Stassi at some point this offseason, because is he really going to bounce back, or is he just going to be somebody that kind of gathers a paycheck and ends up becoming kind of a Jeff Mathis on our team? But here's
Your
the thing about
favorite.
Jeff Mathis. I hate Jeff. I don't hate him. I struggled with him. But when he was on our team, the thing that Jeff brought was a great glove.
Yes.
And Stassi didn't have that last year, nor did he have a good bat.
Right.
And so I think you got to bring something. What I liked about Chad Wallach when he came up is he at least handled the bat pretty well, and he had a strong glove behind the plate. It wasn't spectacular, but he was a great backup, and I think he was really great for Reed Detmers in that no-hitter. So that one actually stands out to me a bit, and the Jaime Barria number isn't shocking, but I'm curious as to what Jaime will be for us this next season, because his role that he played was great, but it really wasn't a high leverage role. It was more like, hey, who do we got out there? We need somebody to clean this up. Okay, let's bring Jaime in to clean it up. And I don't know, maybe he might be on the tipping point of being a starter for us and really filling in those moments where maybe a starter's out or injured and Jaime can come in. But nothing really stands out as shocking to me. Anything stand out like as undervalued or overvalued to you?
Griffin Canning at 1.1 million. He hasn't been there enough to really earn that. I realize that, I don't want to take any dollars out of anybody's pockets or say that they don't deserve something, but I think that he is going to need to really prove himself this year if he's healthy and if he's back. And he's got that back injury that kept him out all season. But 1.1 million. I imagine he'll come in under that just because he missed all of the season. I think the Angels have a case to say, I don't know if it's 1.1. I think it's more like 900K. And I realize, that's a lot of money to us and not a lot of money to them. But I think that Canning will likely come in under that 1.1 million just because of the lack of playing time and the lack of healthy injury or healthy days that he has had. So I really think he has a lot to prove there. But as far as the rest of these go, Renjifo 2.4, I'm okay with that. Walsh 2.7, Ward 2.9, Patrick Sandoval 2.8. That's very affordable for some of your best players. And it's like, man, we have a young core emerging. I know we just talked about the Braves the other day and how they locked up a lot of those guys. I think we'll be lucky when new ownership comes in and they'll recognize what they have and the talent that they have on hand and lock up a lot of these guys for the future. I would love to see that as one of their first moves, to say, hey, these are guys we want to keep around for a good long time. They're affordable. They're worth it. Let's invest in them and then get the big pieces around them to help us get back to the playoffs and have another winning season.
John, the Angels obviously are for sale. We haven't heard really any updates as to where that is, but that's not unusual in Anaheim because we never get updates until like after the news is already broke, or after they've already made a decision. So the rumor is that there is conversations happening and that we'll have more information maybe during the ownership meetings in December and after that. So John and I are going to pay attention to that. We'll bring you information as we hear it. And guys like Sam Blum and some of those guys on Twitter are great. Jeff Fletcher. So follow those guys. They'll give you some information. But the reason why I'm talking about this is a report came out recently of the top 10 professional sports teams in the greater Los Angeles area.
Okay.
And here's what's really interesting about it. We're not going to be surprised by some of the values of some of the teams. But there's always a conversation about like, well, Dodgers, for example, they're number 3 on this list, $5 billion in reported value, their organization. And they have their own sports network. They do a great job of advertising. They have owners that have a lot of money, and Magic Johnson's a part of that. So I think Magic actually brings a lot of resource in just because of his name brand. The Rams are actually number 1, $6.2 billion.
Wow.
Here's what I'm seeing here as I'm looking at these numbers.
Yeah.
These aren't indicative of a successful team on the field.
Right.
These numbers are actually indicative of great ownership, great leadership, and really, I think, being in California, because Southern California is an expensive place to live, as you and I can high five because that's it's hard to live here at some points because of resources. Here's what's really interesting, John. The Angels are number 6 on this list.
Wow.
And they are valued at $2.2 billion. And they haven't made the playoffs since 2014.
Yeah.
They haven't been over 500 since 2015, I believe.
Right.
And so they haven't had a great team. They've had great players. We all know this. I'm saying everything that we know. But what I find interesting is that their valuation isn't necessarily just about the product on the field.
Or the success.
The Angels are a money-making machine. And so any owner that comes in is going to make money. Artie's going to make money when he sells, and whoever comes in is going to make money. And so I think these numbers are actually pretty great because it shows that even if you're struggling in Southern California, your team actually doesn't lose its value because of other opportunities, their relationships with sports networks, their relationships with advertisers, their relationships with players. Johnny, when I see that number, that tells me a couple of things. First, it's great to see that they're that expensive, that they're making money. But 2, it only tells me that they have not capitalized and utilized 2 of the greatest players of all time, Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. To see them sit right here in the middle. Again, let me just read these off. The Rams, $6.2 billion, Lakers, $6 billion, Dodgers, $5 billion, Chargers, $4 billion, Clippers, $3.2 billion. Number 6, the Angels, $2.2 billion. You got the LA Kings behind them at $1.5 billion. The LA Football Club at $900 million, the LA Galaxy at $865 million, and the Ducks at $690 million. And the Angels are smack dab in the middle of that. Yeah. And again, I look at all of these teams. I don't know soccer very well, but I believe that they've been more successful in terms of what they're achieving in the world of soccer versus what the Angels have achieved in the world of baseball. You got the Ducks who are, they're working their way back, trying to get good again. They're number 10. So I think your point stands. The fact that the Angels are sitting there right there with the Clippers and the Kings and the Chargers, and their play on the field has been awful the last 8 years. And they're still worth $2.2 billion. They'll probably sell for $3 billion because you got to make a profit, right? And so I think at the end of the day, any owner who can come in and infuse this team with some good talent, some enthusiasm, some more payroll, I mean, very soon they could climb the ladder and be just as expensive as the Dodgers, as the Lakers, as the Rams. It's insane, the potential and the money being left on the table because the Angels aren't successful yet. The fact that they're this much money and they haven't been successful is mind-boggling to me. But Mike, think about how much more money there is to be made for an owner if they were successful, because then you have fan investment, fan interest, fans show up to the games. We talked about the low attendance in the second half of the season. Fans want to like the Angels. People want to enjoy the Angels. You and I want to enjoy the Angels. Everybody listening, everybody watching. The problem is, this second half of the season, they were not fun to watch. They were unenjoyable and kept me from spending money. I know I'm just one person, but I'll buy 2 tickets to a game so my wife Abby and I can go. And I think a lot of people chose to do the same thing. Like, I don't really want to go. So again, this is a wide open ocean of potential for the next owner to come in and boost the value of this team because they're here at $2.2 billion and they stink.
There's a lot of
right
good
now.
meat here, Sean.
There's a lot of good meat here, Sean. And that's
Yeah.
the thing. If somebody would just come in and do the right thing and sign the right players and put a winning product on the field, Artie honestly is at fault here because yes, he got it from 183, 187, whatever it was when he bought it to 2.2, and he'll have enough money to do a Scrooge McDuck swimming pool for the rest of his life. But I look at this number and I'm like, compared to the Rams, Lakers, Dodgers, you could easily be up there.
John, they don't own the stadium. They don't own the parking lot. They don't have what the Lakers have. They don't have what the Chargers have. They don't even have what the Dodgers have.
Right.
And they're 2.2 billion, which just reminds us of how ridiculous the luxury tax number of 184 in Artie's mind, that he wouldn't go past that. How stupid that is, because he is, according to these numbers, should be making money hand over fist. And if he's not, then he should fire his entire front office and get people that actually know how to advertise and promote guys like Mike Trout, who's the nicest guy in the world, and Shohei Ohtani, who's even nicer than the nicest guy in the world. Yeah. And they're recognizable and they're likable. Come on. You need to think bigger and better and futuristic when it comes to this team and when it comes to these players.
Absolutely. And I man, it's crazy to me that this evaluation and where they sit, like you said, they don't own the stadium. They don't have their own TV network. I mean, they have their radio station, but that's their radio station.
Yeah.
It's wild to me that there's so much money being left on the table here. I think whoever comes in and buys this team will certainly make much more money than Artie has been able to, even though he already has. By the way, the luxury tax is $230 now. So it's even more ridiculous that he hasn't gone near that, considering that they wouldn't even get penalized for another $100 million with this roster and with this payroll.
What's another $100 million?
What's $100 million between friends? Huh? Come on. Yeah. So at the end of the day, we can't wait for new ownership to come in, turn this team into a winner. And again, there is so much money left on the table. It will be the most valuable investment that the new owner will ever make, investing in the Los Angeles Angels.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. We're going to start a drive, maybe a GoFundMe. Let's all just buy the Angels. How about that?
Please.
That would be awesome. Hey, now make your second listen, the Locked On MLB podcast with our friend Paul Francis Sullivan. You can call him Sully because that's what we call him. And he's talking all about the Major League playoffs right now. You can follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, be sure to give us a follow at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. We would love to hear from you because, Michael, Monday is going to be
Mailbag Monday. So send us all of your questions. Send us all of your thoughts. You can even call us on our voicemail line, 714-409-6396. 714-409-6396. We would love to hear your thoughts on anything we talked about today or this week, or we'd love to hear your thoughts and your questions about anything that you would like us to cover here on Locked On Angels.
Yeah, we really appreciate when you send us questions and give us feedback on what you bring to the table. And again, the voicemail line will be in the episode description, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And again, you can message us at Locked On Angels, at Super Halo Bros, wherever you prefer. Until Monday's show, have a great weekend, and we will see you then. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
My name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
You all take care. Have a great weekend, and we will see you on Monday.